Okay. Um, Welcome to the Wandering Wanderer podcast. Today is Tuesday. It's the 18th, is it? Tuesday, the 18th of April. So I have a bit of a show for you guys today. A bit of pre-production, uh, what would you say, scripting. I wrote out a bit of stuff. It's kind of a bit all over the place, so you'll have to bear with me. Um, but I guess you're used to that. Um, I don't know where I should start really. Uh, what is this? So yeah, that was yesterday. I have this notebook now, and I just kind of write my thoughts into it as I'm going. And that was something we hit on yesterday. I liked about the lobbyists. So the corporate NGOs, the lobby groups, their corporate lobby groups. These are all um, mechanisms of fascism for the fascist governmental industrial complex. And we're the only people who's not allowed to lobby anybody without being called names. If you don't agree with the people who can't decide what sex they are, they they have deprived us of our identities. They choose to identify us and themselves, and we don't get any say in the matter at all. We can't identify ourselves at all, But it's a it's a privilege, I guess, to the younger generation and those with the more liberal mind to reserve the right to label everybody and everything and tell everybody they portend without actually acknowledging the gigantic population of the planet that doesn't agree with them at all, or even know they exist, you know. But they do actually think they're talking to everybody and telling everybody on the planet how to live, as the slaves that they are. So we was referring to them yesterday as victims, and really, yes, we're all slaves, but there's those of us who are fiscal slaves. I am a fiscal slave. I'm stuck in a fiat currency system. I'm stuck in a ever increasing inflation system. I'm stuck in a devaluation of currency system. I'm a slave because I have no control over the value of my currency, and we deserve it because we trusted people with euro printing machines and dollar printing machines, and we said, "Oh, you fella with a suit in a bank, you can print the money, and we'll honour that with our labour and our resources. No problem. Take our oil, our gold, our gas, fish. Take all that, and we'll exchange it for this money that you printed in your bank over there. Thanks very much." And then we'll delude ourselves, and we'll tell ourselves that we're paying our debt bonds with our taxes. We're with these debt bonds that we have to give the ECB for our euros that they print on their machine in the Eurobank, and you're not allowed to know who it is that's doing the printing. Or anyway, so we give them the debt bond, and they give us the euros with interest. We have to pay the interest back. So when we say, as I often hear said, sometimes it's said to civil servants, my taxes pay your wages, or my taxes pay for the road cleaning, the road works, or whatever. My taxes pay for this service. My taxes pay for your school, your education. We say these things all the time. And when we think of it in that kind of terms, we're really doing our great grandchildren and our great grandchildren a great disservice. We're completely disenfranchising them of the burden we're putting them under by not paying for service with our taxes, by using money, borrowed money that we hadn't a notion of paying back the money they borrowed 20 years ago, to mind what they borrowed since and what they're going to borrow. And that's what your taxes pay. They pay those borrowings. They don't pay for services at all. The budget for services that suit the narratives and agendas of the currency overlords, they have no problem issuing bonds for those kinds of spending. But if it was for the nation, for the families, for the national interest, this is where you see um, publicization, where they strip those assets from nation and they do turn it into a commercial entity, and they go about it in that manner. And we find ourselves at the end of the whip of the euro as a fiscal slave. And I can accept this, and I can accept this burden, and I can accept that I have an obligation to live up to it. But I don't accept that children born tomorrow have any obligation to live up to any debt contract that didn't even exist when they were, well, sure. Are they alive now? 9-month abortions, like, sure. How was he in a contract? Do you know, if his head could have been squeezed between a forceps and his brain exploded out to his ears, how was he born when he born? If he managed to get through all that hazard, and you go, here you go, you're liable for all those taxes now that your great grandparents allowed the fellow with the dollar and the euro printing machine. You know, that he's going to be delighted, isn't he? He'd nearly rather the fucking forceps. Sorry, that's not. No, he wouldn't. Anyway, this is the kind of upside down land that we find ourselves in. We're expected to trust these banks and these bankers, and we're told that the idea of a national currency is absurd. And then, in almost a manner of rubbing your nose in it, of 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 telegraphing their true intent, motive, desires, they rubbish your claim about a national currency, and they say, sure, you don't even have a country. You don't have a border. You don't have borders. Sure, who are you? You're just some other immigrant that went there thousands of years ago. Sure, you don't even have a country. Why would you want a currency? That's what they're saying to you. And it's up to us. Is that what we manifest? Do we go along with that conversation? Yeah, they can gaslight us into that conversation, and we can engage it, and we can joust, and we can win the argument over and over again, and go around the chessboard playing the 3D chess. Or, you know, you could just play normal chess with maybe even 4 or 6 pieces. You don't need them all. Just play one chessboard with a few pieces. Even go playing drafts with 4 or 6 pieces. Most people aren't fulfilled by that kind of a life. They have delusions of playing 3D chess with, the events in their life all the time, and it leads them to. Well, I don't know where it leads them. I haven't been to that place. I don't play 3D chess. My problems are basic, and I more play like I have 6 or 4 draft pieces on a draft board. Maybe a chessboard sometimes. Indeed. But I wouldn't have huge complex problems I need to be feeling validated by. My complex problems are shared by us all, right? So that doesn't give me uh, the kudos for talking. So that was a conversation I had with somebody yesterday, and he actually made a very good response. Now, I it's a you know it's an earthy kind of tone to this, I guess, at least organic. I don't know how he put it originally, but it boiled down to this basically: the fact that we're so enslaved, the fact that I would call us the conscious slaves. We're aware we're slaves, the fiscal slaves. we're free in our hearts, we're free in our minds, we're free in the gate of our walk. And we live life with a certain joy and a certain skepticism. We take nothing for anyway. Let's not go down there. But then there's the other kind of slave who who who's away, who's just a slave, and it doesn't matter to them that they're a slave. It doesn't. They see it as quite a good life. They're unconscious of the slavery. They can delude themselves into not thinking too much about currencies and labor markets and mass immigration. I have to be more careful with that term. We all have to do it. We're being gaslighted into talking about immigration all the time and the trans Irish. But anyway, um, so he brought up Bobby Sands, and he said about the laughter of our children and how when his mother had tried to take him off the strike, he said to her that it wasn't for her and it wasn't for him and it wasn't even for his own children. It was for his grandchildren and his great grandchildren, and it couldn't be stopped. And that's and I felt in that it boiled down to that. And that I got my turn to speak, and I kind of felt as though he had set up an equation of life for the serfs and the slaves, where in your greatest power is your willingness to sacrifice yourself for your children, you know, and these are the things that the retard elites fear about humanity and human beings, the things they will do for their children. That's just one of the things they fear of us. And if it is the case that we live in the abject slavery I believe we all live in most of the time, um, then in that situation, like even rats will protect their young when they're cornered. Even rats, like, no, you know, rats have weasels and cats and things to worry about. They don't have fellas with a huge amount of resources and all that to worry about. But you know, when animals young are threatened, it's a very basic instinct, and it's only a matter of expression after that. And I think there are many thousands of people expressing themselves on that topic now, very regularly. And we choose to make women and children our priority. We choose to make their bodies, their womb, their creator, the only animal, the only thing that created anything for a very long time on this planet was the Lord. And woman, woman created children, but man was banging sticks, banging stones, and sharpening sticks. That was the limit of man's creation for so long. And for all of history, even before there was books and records and paintings and whatever, we know that the creator on the planet was woman, and the creator in heaven was the Lord. And it didn't matter. You couldn't, it was very difficult for humanity. It was only very select humans for most of humanity's history that could create much more than a belt buckle or maybe a sword, you know. And it isn't until that started to rise in humanity, that power to create, that we lost the sight of our Lord, and we started to look at ourselves as our own saviors because we had so much power of creation, and that remains. That remains. We've that much power of creation now. We're talking about handing it over to alternative intelligence. Um, I'm not going to call it artificial because, well, mimicry they say is the uh, is the highest form of a compliment. Mimicry is the highest form of a compliment from a retard, I would always qualify. But anyway, so we're in that kind of slave place where our women and children are under threat, or they're trying to wipe out our women at the idea of what a woman is. It is never good when the totalitarians start to turn on those that whose rights they had used to achieve their objectives. They held up women as their shield, and the victim women who were victims, they held them as a shield in front of them, while they launched from corporate NGOs. Um, Out from behind them, they launched political idea, political doctrine, political dogma that was used to alter society in many, many ways, in all kinds of ways, over a huge course of our history, the more recent history. And now they're at the bottom of the victim totem pole, and actually there's more kudos to be made for that communist moral hierarchy by attacking women than actually protecting them. They're not very useful anymore, women, for developing rights. Rights now are gone so sophisticated, you know, sophisticated is the way they are. So, you know, yeah, women aren't. You're not complicated enough. I'm sorry, ladies. You're not really victim material anymore. So now you just have to be victimized, and to see this kind of tyranny that we're aware of turning on its purported supporter, its purported cause de celebre. It's this is this rights movement, they call it, I guess. This is one of their chief main chariots of war. The Trojan horse. We'll bring in the feminist rights movements and extrapolate it to as far as we can, and then cast them aside and then just delete them. That's what happens, isn't it? You know, we don't belong from slavery to socialism to gas chambers. Doesn't, you know, like if you think of the most, certainly the minimum wage and everybody up to 15, 20 euros an hour, 17, 18 euros an hour, like how much of the population, the workforce is that? That's 90% to 95% of the population in the workforce. That's the kind of money they're on. And they go to work for 8 hours a day, but they have a 2 hour commute either side of that, or at least a 1 hour commute either side of that. So that's a 10 to 12 hour day. And you're just finished your commute. You haven't made your dinner or interacted with your family or children. And then you have to get to bed because you have a big long journey, and So you couldn't get a slave to do that. If you drove a slave that hard, he'd quit. If you were whipping a fella to do that, he would quit. He wouldn't do it. To leave his family before they even get out of bed in the morning, and to come back and have your dinner when everybody else has gone to bed. You just, it's unnatural. It's that simple. It's not good for the family. It's not good for the nation. But that is the lifestyle that people are expected to call a life. That you can work that hard and basically have nothing at the end of it. And if you do have that nest egg built up, and you are getting that bit farther ahead, even if you're one of those lucky people, the economic, you want to be getting in and out every 7 years or every 5 years you'd really want to be keeping an eye on markets and such to retain the value of your savings. I'm not saying that you can't do it, sure, but it's not as straightforward as just working real hard and saving your money, because they'll dilute the value of your savings. So, the word is slave, and it's a question of whether you're going to be an unconscious slave or a conscious slave. And like when the masks, the masks were only about compliance, but what we saw there was a bunch of unconscious slaves, normal run of the mill people, just go about their daily lives. looking after their grandkids, looking after their kids, going to work, bringing people to school and soccer training, not really horrified or disturbed by the nature of their everyday now. They always have plans for the future. They're telling you about some event that they're going to, or something they're going to do, or some place they have just come from or just been. And they don't really talk about what they're doing now when they're with you. They don't talk about the now of it. And, it seems to be always somewhere else these people talk about. And they're just so busy, they're just so flat out that they don't have very much time for themselves at all. And they don't think about themselves, and they don't think about the now, and they don't think about long-term consequences of outside influences, national and international. No, they don't think about those things. They think about the cycle of gratifications that they've built into their various days that they deserve because they work so hard and they commute. And, it's not the existence that I've chosen for myself. I've chosen a different one, and I know many people that have a different existence, and it's not concerned with facts and figures, and it's not concerned with the last news article or the next news article or the last video. Or I'm not saying those things don't exist. I'm not saying they don't have a place, but that's not where I'm at with my life. Looking at the more newest facts and extrapolating the outcomes that could only be negative from such data. You know, if the data's all negative, the outcomes are going to be all negative. It's not your fault, but the process of constantly analyzing news, and facts, and data, and you know, it gets to be habit forming. It gets to be, um, we tend to retreat to our obsessions when we feel threatened. We tend to use our obsessions as a shield, and we feel comfortable in those narratives around our obsessions because we're so good at them. And I feel like if I could explain it in terms of without attacking it head on, just to give you a bit of a anecdote, I suppose. But if you can imagine, what am I trying to say here now? So if well, say it's the thief breaking into your house. I've told this story before, where if you're lying in your bed and you're asleep in your house, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and your missus or somebody else in your family wakes you up and says, there's a thief in the garden. They look like they want to come into the house, and they shake you up and they say, there's a thief in the garden. And you're looking at them going, what? There's a thief in the garden? And they say, yeah, there's a thief. He's climbing in the window. Come on, get up quick. Come on, he's climbing in the window. He's going across the landing. Get up quick, and we'll do something about it right now. Come on. He's going taking the television. He's taking the television. Get up. Come on. Put on your shoes. Get a stick. Let's go down. Bait the head off him. We take the television. We kick him out. That's what you're doing. So you've got this urgent news that you're trying to use to motivate a person to take immediate action with force because you're in a fearful situation to end that immediate threat and to retain your property rights and to retain the security of your home. You talk with urgency. You're pushy. You give the scariest details. You present the evidence in a way that motivates the person in a angry in a might be a very responsible way. Anger can save your life too. Like there's no doubt about it. I wouldn't be talking down anger. I'm just saying that as a mode of operating or as a mode of communication, when your communication style is based in providing the most up-to-date, frightening information in order to motivate the listener to act in the shortest possible delay in a way that is conducive to an immediate end to the tyranny, where you drag the tyrants out. You go over the gate and into the Dáil, and you drag end the tyranny tomorrow, the day after, immediately. You know, and we can skew our presentation of facts. Now, I'm not saying that the facts are wrong, but I'm saying that we can ourselves, we talk about transgender ideology and all these other ideologies and obsessiveness and these things. And if we tend to be obsessive about facts and figures and news and predictions and outcomes, if we are obsessive about these things, and this is how social media, it teaches you to defend yourself. It teaches you to be defensive. And some people see projection is the best form of defense on social media. They put out the image and you dare not conflict with it or there'll be war, you know. So we're in that kind of situation. I kind of lost my train of thought there. Um, yeah, it's I'm wondering, right? So what was I saying? I don't know. Uh, Human interactions. Yeah, I don't know what I was saying. We can uh, we can continue on. I have a script anyway. Oh yeah, I was something about the transgenders. Yeah, and are upset if that we say these people are obsessive about their narratives regarding various topics, but we can be obsessive about news and bombarding people with facts and figures. And as a method of communication, certainly to people who are either on the fence, worried, um, waking up early, you know, um, prone to prejudice, prone to prejudicial judgments, prone to believing the hype, prone to having um, listened to so much negativity about your fellow countryman. All this stuff. You can't. You have to have an emotional connection with people. People have to like you before they're going to listen to you. And it doesn't matter how much you say to them unless they respect. Well, respect is a funny one because there's many definitions, but people really have to trust you before they would open up to your possibility that information you're sharing with them might change their worldview. And if that is what you're trying to do, well, it, the idea of the urgency and dragging the person um, down to the living room and showing them their man taking the television, you know, it is useful when you're in that situation where there is an immediate, and in that moment there's an intruder in the house. This is the kind of speech you use. These are the kind of conversational tactics you use. But if you're not in that immediate place, you don't need to talk in that way. And actually, you can just do this. You can just wonder. You don't have to manifest any narrative. You don't have to play along with anybody's delusions. You can just wonder. You can just wonder about things and not get attacked. And it's nice. It's relaxing and it relieves stress wondering about things. That don't I don't mean wondering about outcomes and anticipating negative outcomes. I just mean wondering about thoughts and concepts. And we don't do it enough. And it's where our expression is gone. We don't have enough expression. We have a lot of people listening. We have a lot of listeners, and we have a lot of talking or typing going on in chat groups and such things around the place. But when I'm out and about, our expression isn't there. And one of the most inoffensive things you can that can come out of your mouth is a question. You can't be accused of lying. You can't be accused of a lot of things. You're just asking a question. And actually wondering aloud is very, very effective in public settings. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I have a particular fan. who has taken to going to when the podcast is on. I want to say hello to everybody in Tesco. If my friend is playing you in the queue around the Tesco cash register, um, good day to you all. I'll be down. I'm hearing that Tesco are intending to go cashless, and I've got a thing or two to say about that. And we'll have a look at your sales on the day and see if it looks like it's something you want to go ahead with. Yeah. So that's to anybody in the Tesco queue that my friend likes to bring her phone down and put the speaker on and buy several packs of chewing gum one after another. Ah, that's brilliant, brilliant, genius, genius. Uh, right. Yeah. So we have to be the author of events in our lives and the actions in our lives, or we're not living. That's not a life, and there's too many, it's too easy with, when we choose to manifest these people's narratives with our speech and we hand over the control of the of vocabulary used to express ourselves on certain topics, we also hand them over a kind of a presumption or the affirmative. And it's you're saying that we tend to then have a frame of mind where we're reacting, we're living reactively to stimulus, and they controlling or tyrannical stimulus, and we tend to live from that point of view. And indeed, a lot of the things we do are reactions, but they're reactions to stimulus other than tyranny. And there might just be there are other inputs in our lives, be it our family, be it our work, be it our personal relationships, our friends, the information we consume. There's whole other situations that cause us to be motivated to author events. Now, it is true that they do sometimes fit into narratives, or even often. There's always a narrative around something you're doing. You can see it. You can see it when you're talking to people and they're explaining how what you're talking about, how they understand you, and they'll give you an anecdote or they'll talk about something in the past that reminds them of what you're talking about. So you're in that narrative conversation, and you're talking about events that are in the past. So if we choose to live from that point of view, we're denying ourselves our authorship. And even though sometimes our actions do align with those that we would see as our oppressor, our opposition, the tyrants, I'm glad to say in my life anyway, that doesn't happen that often. It certainly happens vastly more that the people that my the events I author, the way that they align up is with people who support me and who also share in my goals and help me achieve my events in my life. That's the vast majority of all my output is just that fulfilling. But yes, on occasion, my output is when measured from the points of view that a particular point of view that can be applied in hindsight and the crystallization of memories. You can adopt the position of any point of view and look at events and say lots of things about them. But that's not why the person or myself was doing the thing. It does fit a narrative, but it doesn't necessarily belong in the narrative. It could just be an original event that does fit narratives, because what doesn't fit a narrative? So we deny ourselves the authorship of our events, the events in our lives, and we allow them to be put into narratives that do nothing other than destroy us, our family, our nation. And we have to pull back from this kind of thinking and delivery and manifestation in our lives. And, yes, sometimes peculiarly things you do will seem to align with people you don't, or events that don't necessarily show you in your best light and or uh, make you suitable for YouTube. Maybe it doesn't fit the script for some political campaign, or who knows. I I'm yeah, I don't know. it, these random events in life that are the cause they're caused by the motivations of what's happening in your life, not just the narratives that you're subject to. And it's how we cope with that pressure. It's how what we manifest with those pressures. This is our reality, or will become our reality. And if those pressures cause us to jump into the neg hole, to go tic-tac-toe into the neg hole, that's a learned behavior. It's conditioning. There's no need for it. You don't have to think that way. There are solutions. You're just looking at the wrong problems. Um, as I was, it might be easy just to play normal chess with a few pieces. You don't need to be doing the 3D chess with all the pieces. But I'm happy to say too, though, that in the grand scheme of things, most of my events are I'm satisfied with them and I'm happy with them, and they're actually consistent with my character and my integrity. And you know, this is what my life is. It's a series of events I authored and that were authored by other people. I facilitated others to author events in their own lives gladly. You know, this is society. This is how we live. It's wonderful. Um, so there's no need for all of those hypersensitive reactions that we've learnt from social media defense 101. If if you spend a lot of time on certainly the legacy social media, um, you're you're very a person that you can tend to be a hyper defensive, hypersensitive, and hyper um, in tune with every meaning of every word and multiple interpretations for simple sentences. Um, you know, analytical, over analytical, um, insecure about um, being attacked, and feel the feel the need to clarify everything they say. And if you spend a lot of time on social media in those kinds of challenging environments, this kind of defensive, and it really, it's a very conversational defensiveness, conversational deflection. These are very highly honed skills, conversational skills nowadays. And that I guess there's no other way to be on social media. That might work on social media. But when you practice that so much, when you come out into your real life, into the real world, talking to real people, if that's how you are, if your learned behavior, conditioned behavior from social media is to be defensive, that level of defensiveness, that level of hyper awareness, um, that level of paranoia, basically, um, it's not suitable for actual human interaction. You know, it doesn't work. I mean, it's not. You're not going to have sustained relationships with people if you use the rules of social media to engage in interpersonal communications in the real world. It's different, and it's it's a much slower thing. It's a much more subtle thing, and um, it's actually a lot more fun. And you can relax because you've got far more than just verbal cues. You've got all kinds of cues in the conversation, and your eyes and your communication skills are very tuned into this. And the interpersonal reactions become much more fun when you're not defending a image created on social media for fear of some public embarrassment. It's a much different way to go about living. Again, living in the now of it, and what are you doing now in this moment, rather than the plan I have for the future, or the awful event that happened yesterday that confirms the doomsday prediction. You know, outside of that, in the wonderment space, where you might find a solution, you know. instead of grinding your gears in these negative outcomes and negative anticipations by people who have become hypersensitive to every kind of trigger word and can instant recall multiple narratives that are associated with the sequence of trigger words. It's like a kind of Olympic sport, a conversational. That's not a conversational trick. It's a conversational Olympic sport. You know, um, it's like a badge of honor how many narratives you can associate, and the conversations have become more like we're tweeting. You know, where everybody has to check every 6, 7, 10 words. There's a interaction. People don't have big long sentences anymore. Says the fella now that's talking for 44 minutes in one long sentence. Um, but that's me. Uh, that's what I do, right? Um, you should give it a go. You should give it a go. There's a big market out there for it. Don't be such a pussy. Come on, make a couple of videos. Tell me about the awful thing that's happening to you, that the state is doing to you, and what you're going to do about it, and tell other people how to handle it. You know, there should be thousands of videos being made every day, and that's how you're not censored, because they can only censor that file. You know, if it's one video and someone shares it, another person shares it, they censor that file. But if there's thousands of files, it gets very, very, very difficult to censor. You know, minor edits cause a whole new file. You know, so like we have people now who have been tormented by weirdos in their school. Their children are tormented. We have fellas that's damaged by their doctors and damaged by vaccines and missing cancer diagnoses. The farmers are gone balubas. They're dead right. They should be. It should be the way it should have gone balubas years ago. Where are the fishermen? I challenge now the fishermen to back up the farmers. You might as well. You might as well now at this stage. You know, I know, I know it's difficult, and you know, there's a lot of water under the hull of other vessels from other jurisdictions. And there's a lot of fish destroyed, and there's a lot of money lost and resources lost, and you know. But this is a renewable resource, and we're handing it over while emburdening our great grandchildren with monopoly money. The children that didn't get the 9 month abortion will have to pay the monopoly money debt while we're giving away the fish and the gas and the oil and the gold and everything else they can get their hands on. You know, like we are completely fiscally irresponsible as an electorate ourselves. We are judicially irresponsible as an electorate. There's no accountability. There's no demand for accountability. How can we get strong decisions from our circuit court and high court judges when there is no clamour for justice? You know, when the Irish people clamour for justice, there's been amazing feats of judicial gymnastics that have turned off the media spigots. And, you know, when Irish people clamour like that, judges respond, TDs respond. Um, but the people are now so cowed, they fear clamour, they fear standing out, they fear the phone call to work by the politician, endorsed by the Taoiseach if you're a nationalist. Um, ring, oh, you need to fire that fella. He doesn't agree with the narratives around this and that. He doesn't agree with this narrative, and he doesn't agree with that narrative. So you know, it doesn't matter that his children are in school. You know, they'll probably not agree with the narratives either if they're his kids. So they're probably causing trouble in the school. You know, so we just take away their income, and they won't be able to afford to go to school, and they won't be able to afford food, and hopefully they'll starve like the kulaks and like the lesbian turfs up in the first of the many groups now that'll be aren't sufficiently on flames enough, on fire enough to use as a suitable vehicle for driving civil rights projects. So instead, we'll use them as cannon fodder. You know, for our latest victim that we can hide behind and launch political rockets from out behind. I believe I caused maybe some reaction from the turfs. Sorry, the LGBs. I apologize. You're the LGBs, and they're the TQPs, right? So I didn't hear it was particularly negative, no rant, and I may have ruffled a few feathers with my words, but they weren't intended as a criticism. I'm more exposing my lack of uh, rigorous memory. Um, I don't feel like I was been logically redisposed. I feel like, yeah, I remember thinking about these topics at other times, having similar um, thoughts to many of the people that were at the meeting on Sunday, and you know, it was good to go through those discussions again and be reminded by these ladies um, about those considerations. And we were often forced to. The whole thing is about being forced to acknowledge unreasonable considerations. You know, imaginings and feelings and control fetishes and all this stuff. Anyway, um, so when somebody comes with a reasonable, discernible, um, genuine concern like that, you kind of, and that's their experience. You kind of have to. It gets into the evidence pile. You know, it's not just um, you know background noise. This is personal testimony we're dealing with, and you know, I guess what struck me about the whole situation was, well, it just reminded me of the Father Ted moment, and it's sure we're all xenophobes now, Father, right? That's where we're at, like, you know, it's we're all xenophobic now about the trans ideology. You're gone xenophobe, you know, and that's one of those words now that can be applied uh, to both the nationals and the LGBs. The LGBs now are xenophobic. It doesn't mean that. This look at who's calling you xenophobic. It's the victims and the unconscious slaves still wearing the masks, you know, still moping around the place, looking for somewhere to get angry, looking for portals for their anger that their expression gets them kudos in their moral hierarchy. Oh God, my head. It's just like it reminds me of the rats, and the slaves. We often refer to as the rat race, and that's why I was referring to that there. I just see I mentioned it somewhere else in my notes too. And I was saying there about the victims, and it's not their hearts that's broken. It's their minds, their bodies, and their souls. We have a generation or two that think their hearts were broken when really it's everything else, you know. And they pander with these lonesome relationship songs, these um, high images of high expectations and pornography, and then they talk about broken hearts and love, and it's not. It's the mind, the body, and the soul that's broken, and it's. I find this a lot with people who come with the news and the facts and the the latest prediction of doom, that when you don't comply with their plan, their urgent plan to remedy the situation. Or if they find out about a plan that you have, they'll often try and commandeer it and turn it into something that'll remedy the situation in the first 36 hours, you know. And when you don't comply then with that, they can then they can justify um, being hateful towards you. And you know, when you don't comply with this person's urgent need, this immediate threat they perceive, this danger they perceive, and that you don't comply with their plan for dealing with that, or you don't deliver your resources to their plan to make it happen for in the short term, they feel justified in um, destroying you, or in, you know, Patton said, um, don't don't fear my anger, fear my indifference. And it's a scary concept. I think it was Patton, right? He said, don't fear my anger, fear my indifference. So a man of his composition, he was able to control his anger, and men like that are very proud of their, well, it's a passive thing really most of the time to control your anger. But he would also be aware, a man like that, that without his um, consciousness of people's welfare, he could be omissive. He could omit to protect a large number of people's safety. Um, it wouldn't even require his action. He could forget, or he could not act, and vast numbers of people could have suffered. And he was aware of his power. And you know, I often find people with urgent plans for fixing everything. Um, their impatience justifies many kind of destructive behaviors, and it's incumbent, I think, on us all to not allow our own authorship and the power you have in your own life to be commandeered by people with an obsession with finishing this today, tomorrow, the day after, next week, next month. And I'd ask you to conserve your power and allow it to build in you a motivation to act in a longer term sense, and a simplicity to be to feel rewarded by the fruits of those actions with your single tier chessboard and your 4 or 6 pieces that you manage well and that you strategize well for. And then you use the rest of your time for wondering, looking out the window. See, when was the last time you went into a room and found a fella looking out the window? Staring out the window, just looking lost, you know? It doesn't really happen anymore. They're staring at their phones or they're staring at the things. But one time, when I was a young fella, you know, if you were quiet going around the house, you could walk into a place and you'd find a fella and he'd be just gone, staring out the window. And if you left a minute, you could come back after a cup of tea and he'd still be in it, you know, and he could be talking to himself. You know, that was the way people were one time. I'm looking out the window now as I'm talking to you. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful day here in Belfast. And the sun is shining. And I'm going to take the rest of the evening in the garden, I think. But I realize I've been talking for almost an hour now. So I told you I had a bit of pre-production scripting. And, you know, I've become more convinced that we don't have an economy and Europe doesn't have an economy anymore. Our government has established socialism factories, and they will use their ICB and ECB bonds to fund the institutions they require and the budgets they require to convert us all over onto socialism. And the motivating factor is your slavery and your increasing poverty, your lowering standard of living, your increasing insecurity, less satisfaction. Sorry, I'm gone down the hole there, but that's the whip that you look at. Someone will say, "Look, socialism," and everyone go, "What? Socialism? Yeah, that sounds like a cakewalk compared to this." You know, a sick bang into socialism, gas chambers, everybody's dead. You know, that's how it goes. I'm sorry now, but they turn you into a xenophobe, and then they burn you, or they gas you, or they starve you, or they slave you, or displace you, or look at stop, man. Anyway, so we have to get control of the fucking narratives. We have to deliver them something other than socialism that isn't going to require us all to be in a top-down society. That's not for us. But we have to deal with these people who are these elite retards who are terrified of us. You know, they see our capacity, they see our ingenuity, they see our passion, they see how much we love our families and our children, and they see how many of us there are, and it scares the living shit out of them. And we feel like they're doing things to show us what they're doing in their plan, or they're inverting things and turning things upside down and making things. And yes, that's one way to look at it. But from their point of view, I really feel that how that looks to them, that's the manifestation of their fear of something they see in you or us. I think that's how their neghead interprets the beautiful thing that scares them in you and I. And it's not necessarily their plan, you know, and it's not necessarily a projection of or them rubbing their nose into you. And that it's actually a projection. Sorry, it's not necessarily them rubbing your nose and things. And it's actually a kind of a projection of a defense mechanism for that one of many fears they have about your power and my power and all of our power together. What we can do as individuals in our local area over and over again could grind the system to a halt. And we've had a wonderful spell of success, and it looks like we're heading for quite a stable weather pattern, chaps. Quite a stable weather pattern. I'm hoping, and you're all welcome up in Belfast. There's a canvassing opportunity here, but there's always a opportunity for looking around Belfast and getting to see the vibe. It's a really special town. Um, Derry is nice too, but it's not quite as big. Derry isn't small, but Belfast is a big place. I was down near the university there the other day. There's a lot of people around. It's a big place, and many very beautiful buildings. So you guys that are interested in politics, you guys that want to see what the other half live like, you're more than welcome here. And I think it's a good signal. The people up here are they're so complimented that you have any interest in their lives at all. They can't. They're not used to it. They're not used to Southerners, or maybe anybody. Or is it Southerners particularly? I don't know. That's from my perspective. And I said something not too long ago. Well, I said a few things, but I said that how I had gone to community meetings and I couldn't tell what side of the cross-border community meetings or cross-community meetings, and that I couldn't tell what side of which community people were from. And I don't want to disenfranchise people of their community and say that they're somehow being more subtle about it. Just 1 second, I have to cough. Hang on, I get some water. What I meant to say was, it's it's not that I mean to say that people aren't expressing themselves in a way that is copacetic with their heritage. It's that when I go to these cross community meetings, I don't go there with that question. I don't go there looking for evidence of one thing or the other. I don't go there with the, I guess, I'm not even going to use the word. You know what I'm trying to say. I don't go there looking for a evidence that would support an opinion either way. That's not one of the questions on my mind. These meetings are always so interesting. It's not it's not something, you know. That's what I meant when I said that I can't tell the difference of people who's at these cross community meetings. I'm not trying to say that I don't acknowledge that it is a cross community meeting. That's the power of it. That's the beauty of it. So I'm not trying to take that power away. I'm just saying that the reason I can say something like that from a point of view, a conflicted point of view, um, I don't want to say I don't see the difference. I don't. That's kind of cliche, but it's that I'm not looking for it. It's that I'm not. So anyway, that's the one thing I wanted to say to clarify. And then again, as well, there was a number of turfs in Galway that had, there's a large number of, a large number, that might be quite the right word, but there's a number of lesbians that work in homeless services all around the country, really. You know, there's many lesbians who have been working in all kinds of health services, but I particularly got to know many um, lesbian members of staff in homeless services around Galway over a number of years. And they had. I remember I had difficulty when I they had difficulty with me saying this. And what I was saying was that, no, this is years ago. This is before the last number of years of immigration and lockdowns. This is when we were all still free. This is when we were all still um, in um, the elixir or the ether, back in the good old days, right? In La La Land. What I had said was that 90% of homelessness is caused by either drug addiction or mental illness. Now, I was particularly referring to street homelessness. I don't mean, um, homeless, housing list homelessness. People who don't have a house because they're taking so long on the housing list. I was referring to people that you see asleep on the street, as that's the kind of homelessness I was talking about, where the people on the street, 90% of them have addiction issues or mental health issues, and they just can't handle a home. They were abused in their home, or there was drug abuse in their home, and they literally can't handle four walls around them. That's the reality for a lot of people. And this was, disagreed with strongly by a group who I have to say, were one of there's a group in Galway of homeless workers that it's been around for 20 years, and they meet once a week to console themselves and to support themselves through their daily anguish of watching the waste and missed application of resources throughout the homeless system. And they actually have their own support group, and they go and have a cup of tea with each other once a week and sit down and, commiserate with each other for just how awful it's all run. And it's largely run by these couple of lesbians I know in the homeless services. And they're tremendous people, some of the most powerful people I've ever met in the homeless services were these people who I would now say would qualify as turfs. I didn't know what it meant back then. But so I have to concede this to the turfs, that it's not that I was necessarily saying that everybody on the street is mentally ill or drug addicted, or 90% of them are, but they could be there because of someone else's mental illness or drug addiction. A lot of people you meet in day centres or winter initiatives or hostels, These are people who've lost their home because their partner was drunk, drug-addled, mentally ill, broke the gaff up, broke the windows, burnt the place, kicked the living, So while you might meet lovely straight people who don't have drug addiction or mental health issues in homeless services at a street level, they're actually there because of someone else's mental health or drug addiction problems. So I'm just putting that out there as a gesture of my understanding of traditional LGB culture and my um, respect for clinical objectivity, you know, and um, so you can find that in it's not a sexuality based trait that so I respect professionals, and these people are professionals. They happen to be lesbians, and they happen to be organized like the turfs, you know. So that I had a bit of a disagreement with turfs around that, and it appeared as though um, you know like we're all xenophobes now, right? So anyway, I'm gone miles over, and I do believe I talked for the full hour. All right, lads. I'm going to knock it off if it isn't already knocked off, right? No, there we go. It had actually knocked off. So that's it, lads. That's the hour, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.